All right, Michael, a team that I'm high on heading into this offseason, the Indianapolis Colts, ended up being the topic that you wrote about today for VSiN. What prompted you to discuss this Indianapolis Colts team, and what kind of stands out when you look at that roster?
Well, I think Jim Irsay, his collection of guitars and, his commentary on Carson Wentz led me to think, and doing this book that I've written that, I was going through a lot of the history of the Baltimore Colts and certainly when his dad owned the team. But, Jim Irsay's been around football a long time, since he's a kid. It's the only profession he's known. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, his willingness to come out and say what he said about Wentz, which I thought was true. Who could disagree with it? And his ability to stand by Reich and Ballard, even though, most owners could say, well, you made that decision, you should get fired, I think was something. And I thought, just when you peel back the layers of the Colts, I think there's this perception of them that is, well, they're really good on defense and Wentz just screwed everything up. When that's really not true. And what highlights to me more than anything when we talk about their over win total at 9.5, and I wrote about this, is the fact that they're only 14-10 in the South. Since Frank Reich's been their head coach, they've only are 4 games above 500 playing in the South. That's to me, to me, that's where the focus has to be. And I think the addition of Matt Ryan will be really good. I think the two things that I wanted to highlight in the piece was their inability to dominate the South. And even though we don't compare this player to Kamara or Christian McCaffrey or, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor as a pass game receiver is remarkable. Averaged 9 yards a catch, had 40 catches last year. To me, with Ryan, and if you're playing fantasy, I think he's should be one of the first picks in fantasy, because he's going to give you 5.5 yards a carry, and he's going to give you 9 yards in the passing game. He's going to catch more balls with Ryan than he ever did. So to me, this guy is so unique that we get caught up how great of a runner he is, but he's really a weapon out of the backfield.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's what he was knocked about. Like, coming out of the draft, everyone said, "Oh, can he catch passes? Can he catch passes?" Because Wisconsin doesn't really throw to their running backs that much, but he clearly can do it. He just wasn't asked to do it up there in Madison. He was a terrific runner, had some issues with the fumbling, but he's corrected that as he's got to the NFL, which not a whole lot of guys can do. That speaks to what his work ethic is like, as he was one of the best offensive weapons in the league last year.
Well, just think about this, and I've been bitching about this for 3 years, right? Since they paid Zeke, right? Zeke had 65 targets last year. He had 47 catches. Zeke averaged 6.1 yards a catch. Taylor's averaging 2.9 yards more per catch. He's got 7 catches more. And Taylor's ratio, which to me is something we don't talk enough about, is the targets compared to the catches, right? So what you want to be able to do is have that ratio. I think his was 51-40. That's a productive ratio. It's a little bit like at bats. If you're getting too many at bats and you're not getting hits, your percentage goes down, right? Well, if you're getting a lot of targets and you're not getting enough catches, something's wrong with the offense, right? It's either you're not making the play, you're dropping the ball, or something's going on. Whereas I think when you look at this guy, last year he got 51 looks. Hines got 57. They both had 40 catches. This guy averaged 9 yards a catch. I think he's going to expand his game with their offense. And I think the additions of John Fox and Gus Bradley on the defensive side, I think the combination of the two, I like the Colts' chances better.
The Colts right now are the favorites at DraftKings, our show sponsor, to win the division. They added Matt Ryan. You mentioned the new defensive coordinator there, Gus Bradley, in Matt Eberflus out in the Windy City in Chicago to take over the Bears. Do you think that's justified as the Colts? Because you mentioned 14-10 under Frank Reich against the AFC South, but here they are as a team that's expected to win this division. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, because I think, look, we know Houston's in rebuilding mode, and we know Jacksonville is too. And Jacksonville should be improved. There's no denying that. Just getting Urban out of there is going to improve them, right?
Yeah.
And, Houston is, whether Davis Mills can handle the job, we'll see. He did a better job last year. He played well. But I think what the concern I have, and I have this every year with Tennessee, is like you've been reading this as much. Like Traylon Burks must be completely out of shape, right?
Yep.
Like he can't stay on the practice field. I mean, if they think they're going to get production out of him as the first round, he's going to have to really change. And then Robert Woods is coming off of a knee. How effective will he be? Are there going to be enough weapons around Tannehill besides Henry? I don't know. I mean, I think they're better on defense. I think there's no doubt. I think they'll get, they've done a good job of repairing that defense. They're going to have to run the ball and play. But the door's wide open for the Colts. If Ryan plays to a level that I think he's capable of, and when he had this offense, right, when he had this style of offense in 16, going back to Atlanta, he averaged 9.3 a pass. Now, you say to me, well, the Colts don't have a number one receiver. And I say, yeah, you're probably right. But in this style of offense with play-action pass, I think Pittman, I think he had 88 catches last year. He's not a one, but he can add value to the team. They've got to get Paris Campbell some kind of production. The guy's played 15 games in 3 years. I mean, he's been a complete durability issue, right? And Alex Pierce has got to come through for him. But more than anything is, look, here's what I think people miss a little bit about the Colts last year. They only played 28 minutes of defense, 12 minutes of defense. And yet the play count, the amount of plays they played in that 28 minutes was exactly the same as their offense ran. The offense ran 1,057 plays. Their defense played 1,050 plays. They played 4 minutes left, but played as much because they were so shitty on third down. They were so shitty, they were not good in situational football, which is what they got to change.
I was reading stuff out of Indianapolis, the reports that are coming out of OTA camp, and they're wowed by Matt Ryan. This is what Frank Reich said to the media, quote, "These last few weeks with Matt have been incredibly eye-opening to what a pro he is. I always knew he was a great passer, but his accuracy, it's insane." And later on, he was kind of almost comparing him to Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, other guys that he's been around. They're loving Matt Ryan. Michael Pittman said he's so accurate, all you have to do is run, turn, and then you catch it. The ball's right there. So far, the early returns look pretty good with the new QB1.
I think they're going to be really good. I mean, when you study Ryan last year and you see how many, I mean, this guy's gotten sacked over 40 times in the last 4 years. He's gotten the shit kicked out of him. I mean, they didn't protect him very well. And yet he was still able to keep his eye level down the field. He was still able to make some throws. They've got to do a better job with him in the red zone. I think he turned the ball over too much in the red zone last year. But I think Ryan's going to be a huge help, especially since he's not the straw that stirs the drink. I mean, he doesn't have to be the guy. This is Jonathan Taylor's game, right? It's Jonathan Taylor's moment to really shine. And, look, last year, Matt Ryan on a shitty team, 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, game-winning drives. I mean, on a shitty team. A team that gave up 560 points, although they don't need defensive help. They need another receiver, Femi, because they only gave up 560 points. The year before, they gave up 626. And the year before that, they gave up 606. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. The points allowed. No, I was giving you the pass. No. But, I mean, they give up so many points. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Maybe Drake London can play both sides of the ball, like high school days. He's
going to have to.
Yeah. This Colts team, though, I'm really high on them. I mean, when they trade for Matt Ryan, I bet them to win the Super Bowl just because of the path, like you mentioned, with the AFC South. Now, I don't want to disrespect Tennessee because every year we disrespect Mike Vrabel and his Tennessee Titans, and every year there they are in the playoffs. They're tough, they're physical, they're always a smart team, and they play situational football, like you mentioned. But I think that the Colts, if all goes well, if they're able to stay healthy, especially Jonathan Taylor, that's a guy who had a big workload in 2021. If he can stay healthy again in 2022, this team should be that 10-11 win caliber team, which in 2022 might be good enough to win that division there.
If they can beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville, they got to go 6-0 or 5-1 in the division. I mean, that's inexcusable. If they don't do that, and they got the NFC East, if they go 5-1 and they go through the NFC East at 3-1, right? So now they're 8-2. They played 10 games. They got 7 games to win 2 more games. I mean, that's really doable. That's doable, but it hasn't happened. When you're 14, like everybody talks about the South being shitty, and it is, but when you're 14-10. You got to win it. You got to win who you play. It's one of the things that you constantly look at your board in your office. Is you're always looking at how do we match up to the division we play in. It's one of Al Davis's pet peeves. Is like every question he would ask you as it relates to the AFC West. How does this guy block that? How does this guy attack that corner? If you can't win, and 14-10 ain't going to cut it.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.